So here we sit, 17 years later, holding it all together. Don't you get tired?
Every day.
How long can hate hold a thing together?
Well, 17 years is quite a long time.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. What was she like?
You've never asked about her, not once. Why not?
At first, just saying her name, even in private, I felt like I was breathing life back into her.
Well, okay, so already I'm seeing some micro expressions of anger in her. And there's some tension between them, a lot of tension.
Yes.
Shall we continue?
That's correct.
I thought if I didn't talk about her, she'd just fade away for you. When I realized that wasn't going to happen, I refused to ask out of spite. I didn't want to give you the satisfaction of thinking I cared enough to ask. And eventually it became clear that my spite didn't mean anything to you. As far as I could tell, you actually enjoyed it.
So why now?
What harm could Lyanna Stark's ghost do to either of us that we haven't done to each other 100 times over?
You want to know the horrible truth? I can't even remember what she looked like. I only know she was the one thing I ever wanted. Someone took her away from me. And 7 kingdoms couldn't fill the hole she left behind.
I felt something for you once, you know.
I know.
Even after we lost our first boy. For quite a while, actually. Was it ever possible for us? Was there ever a time, ever a moment?
That was interesting. When she said, is there ever a time, ever a moment? Eyebrows go up a little bit. Sadness. When he's talking about this this gaping wound from the death of this woman that he loved, not much from her. Not much from her. I think it was actually kind of hard for her to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why she never brought it up. They've been married for 17 years, as she said in the beginning, and she's never been willing to speak about it, ask him about it, or talk about it. So she's probably still got a defensive wall, a defensive mechanism still up.
So basically, he just told her that nothing could replace her. That's a line. Okay. That sucks to be her.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
No. Does that make you feel better or worse?
Doesn't make me feel anything.
You know, interesting. I almost could feel like she's like hardening herself. Gottman calls it stonewalling. It's like when you're having a discussion with someone to just like shut down, to go internal, to go into a dorsal vagal place, to like just kind of dissociate any like emotional feelings away.
Which I think for her is how she lives a vast majority of her life, because the status that she's in, it's very dangerous to show any sign of weakness whatsoever, because if you do and your enemies find out, they're going to use that against you.
Okay.
And so I think that's how, and that's what I was actually wanting to ask you about this scene in particular, because I don't think she may not be outright lying, but I don't think based on her expression that she's being truthful and saying that it doesn't make her feel anything, because she has a little bit of when he says no, she looks down and there's a little bit of an expression, and then she goes back to that stone wall.
Would it show me that?
No.
So she looks down.
Does that make you feel better or worse?
And then stonewall.
Doesn't make me feel anything.
You know, it's interesting when she, let's watch this again.
No.
Ah, you see it right there. It's so this is something that Paul Ekman actually didn't talk about when he talked about microexpressions. But her eyes defocus. And it's something that I see when someone is acutely dissociating, is they just like their eyes kind of like, they kind of defocus right in front of you. So she's feeling anger and then dissociation. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. That seems like what's happening.
No.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better or worse?
Doesn't make me feel anything.
So when she says it doesn't make me feel anything and she kind of pops her eyebrows up, that's not a microexpression. It's just an enunciation of what she's saying.
Okay.
So that's not anything. But also the dissociation. And then she drinks alcohol, which alcohol is a very sort of dissociating type of medication that people use like all the time, you know. Because it kind of takes your brain down, like it takes globally, everything in your brain starts to tune down. So it's dissociating in nature. So that's interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts that you had? Questions?
No. See
Well,
what you think.
Let's talk about empathy or
Okay.
connection.
Okay.
So she hasn't brought it up in 17 years, and he subsequently tells her that he has never been able to replace this past love. And that kind of
Would it help you to know the background of what happened or no?
probably not. And see,
Okay.
this is the interesting thing with empathy is often you can see the emotion and you can empathize with the emotion and the distress, okay, without really knowing the full story. Okay, so if I was his therapist, okay, how would you empathize with him in this moment? Like, let's say she's not in the room anymore.
Yeah.
You're his therapist.
I would say this is obviously something that has affected you throughout your life. I mean, I can still see that it makes you very sad to think of her and to hear her name and to hear her mentioned. It still is something that causes you grief. And it sounds like you've been searching for something else that would fill this void, this loss that you've had, this grief that still haunts you. It sounds like you've been trying to find something that'll make you feel better, and you've never been able to. And that's got to be really depressing and very difficult to handle.
Depressing, I would say, incredibly frustrating because his predominant affect is anger. And for her, I would say, you have been holding this, hoping that he would move on and that you would be the one that gets his attention and gets his affection. And of course, it's very jarring to the senses. It's very dissociating. It would make anyone shut down to find out that all along he's been longing for this other woman.